Okay, in front of me we have the infamous 1999 Mercedes CLR flying car, and it's just for reference behind it, it's a 1998 CLK LM car that raced in Le Mans previous. Now, like I said, this car is famous for flying. However, it was not the first, as I mentioned in a previous video about the Porsche GT198. That car flew at Road Atlanta in the previous year during the Pete Le Mans series. But that said, this is the one that everybody remembers because it did it 3 times over the course of a single event. For 99, the rules had changed. Mercedes, had dominated the had dominated the FIA GT1 championships to the point where they'd beaten the competition into submission, and they all basically said, I'm not going to sign up for a 99 season, and therefore that series was disbanded. So Mercedes put all of their emphasis on trying to win Le Mans. That year, the rules had changed such that you did not have an homologation criteria where therefore you did not have to build a street-going version of the car and sell it to the public in order to qualify for the running of Le Mans. So Mercedes went out about designing a car that could be specifically designed to win at Le Mans and on the Losail circuit. That's a circuit that features long straightaways as well as some twisty turns. However, the design of the car generally is dictated by straight line speed. So Mercedes set about designing the most aerodynamic, fastest slippery car they could possibly do. The car is about 4 inches lower in height than the previous CLK version behind me. They also went ahead and they shortened up the wheelbase to take advantage of longer overhangs both in the front and the rear. So in doing so and in creating these longer overhangs, they were allowed to then also create longer diffusers both in the front and the rear. Mercedes' approach aerodynamically was to create majority of its downforce on underbody of the car as opposed to from airflow above the top of the car. So with that, again, the longer overhangs created longer diffusers in the rear as well as in the front. Now, unfortunately, this car does not have the diffusers represented. You would have had the similar diffuser strakes seen here just behind the wheels, primarily directing airflow, I think, and exiting out these vents here, as well as some airflow towards the back. Now, because they were focused on underbody downforce as opposed to aero downforce, part of the issue became when they also then decided to run a car that had a near neutral rake to it. Most cars at the time would have had a 2.5 negative rake bias to the front, meaning the car, in an exaggerated format, would sit lower in the front than it did in the rear. That created drag, heavier drag on the rear from the rear wing, and Mercedes did not want to have that. They felt like that was reducing their straight line speed and reducing their ability to create downforce underneath the car. So they ran something like negative 0.7, so nearly neutral car. And that also lightened up the amount of downforce generated on the front of the car and put a lot of it towards the rear of the car. So now, between having a shorter wheelbase, a neutral car, you now had what was a very unstable car. And so if you recall or remember, Le Mans is primarily street roads converted to a race once a year. Therefore, the track itself is not nearly as smooth as a dedicated circuit would be. So you can imagine as the car is going down a bumpy road, it would bounce around a lot. And the nose, because there wasn't much downforce being generated here, had a tendency to become very light as it crested hills or went over bumps, according to the drivers. So in an incident during practice, Mark Webber was following the Audi R8 behind it. When he pulled out from behind the slipstream of the car, he found the nose got very light and at some point took off. He reported back to Mercedes that his car had taken flight, and he was actually met with a little bit of disbelief by the Mercedes team. This event was never caught on film or tape or anything. It was purely just Mark reporting back. The car was rebuilt, and 2 days later, during the 30-minute warm-up for the actual race, Webber's car had a second flight. This time he was following his teammates, and specifically he was following one of the Dodge Oraca Vipers as it crested a hill, I believe in the Indianapolis section. Crested a hill and once again took flight, and this is the one that you see all the famous photos of, his car flipping through the air, eventually landing on its roof. Mark was fortunately not injured. However, the car was too damaged to repair prior to the race start. During that time frame between the practice session and the race, the story goes that they called Adrian Newey, who is the chief aerodynamicist for the McLaren Mercedes team. He did not design this car. And he told them to stiffen up the rear suspension and then put some dive planes on the car or canards on the car to help increase front downforce. So as you can see, this car is actually as Webber would have driven it. Does not have the dive planes on the car because his car never made it to the start of LeMans, and those were put on between that practice session and the actual race start. So from an accuracy point of view, that's correct. And if they ever made the number 5 or 6 sister cars in race trim, you would have these dive planes or canards on the front of the car. That said, that was not enough. The car was still too unstable for in race conditions, and so about 75 laps into the race, the number 5 sister car driven by Peter Dunbrook was took flight as well. It was following one of the Toyota GT1s, crested a hill that became very unstable behind the draft, and then effectively cresting the hill, the car's nose pitch went too high, and it then took off. And that's the famous video we all see of the car flying into the woods. Peter Dunbrook fortunately was not hurt. He was knocked unconscious and was, in a side note, he was given a breathalyzer test because given that Lasarth is primarily a street, a street course, he was given a breathalyzer test because it has this typical protocol for, I guess, an accident on a road in France. So anyways, just a side note, then he was taken to the hospital. So that's kind of the history of this car. It's a magnanimous story. It's not one that Mercedes is certainly proud of, and it's probably why I thought this car would never actually get made in 1/18 scale. But anyways, that's the history of the flying car. Like I said, it wasn't the first flying car, but it's the most infamous flying car, given it had 3 incidences in one single event. Fortunately, none of the drivers again were hurt, but again, it's a sad chapter in Mercedes Le Mans history, unfortunately, and they have not been back since at the top flight. So anyways, let's go ahead and take a look at the details of the car, and we'll talk more about that. Okay, so let's talk about the quality of this model. Yeah, like I said, this is a 1/18 scale resin model from Spark. It's resin as evident by my tap test here. It comes in the typical Spark box, the gray box with the one little window. It does come with an acrylic cover and a base with the driver names on it. So anyways, yeah, I mean, not a lot to say other than its typical Spark quality. It's a nice heavy resin model. I think it looks beautiful. Lots of there's not a lot of detail. It's not a lot of decaling. I'm not sure why Mercedes didn't have a livery. They had previous years had the original teal and D2 private logos and stuff like that all over their car. They would have looked great on this. I'm sure those sponsors, given what happened, were happy they were not on board for this particular race. So anyways, yeah, I mean, I think it's a good looking model. It's got actually a fair amount of photo etched parts starting at the front, obvious things like the grills. You have the tow hook. You have these two little eyelets here as well that are done in photo etch. You have some photo etch mesh grill here. Each of these air inlets has photo etch grills in it, as well as back here is a kind of a mesh grill, and here's like a slatted grill back in there, which they could have totally not done, but I think they went the extra mile to do that. And then there's this beautiful kind of silver mesh photo etch part back here. Some nice chrome work around here. I would guess it's plastic plated chrome, but this area looks really nice. There's also a photo etched tow hook here, and then those two little eyelets also back here as well. So anyways, and some photo etch, along, some rivets, I think right here, 1, 2 there, and then on the other side as well. And then you have some carbon fiber decal. Not a lot of the perimeter of the windscreen is done with a carbon fiber decal and decaled rivets. You have obviously the front splitter here is also done in carbon fiber, as well as the rear wing end plates and the wing stays back here, all done in carbon fiber. Looks really nice. Can't tell the inside of the cockpit. It's too small. I mean, I can see some detail in there, but not a whole lot. So I have to assume it's done to typical Spark standards, but being a closed cockpit car, it's kind of hard to see. Maybe they could have done photo etch here for these the latches and that kind of stuff. That's just kind of an impression. But yeah, I mean, not a lot to complain about. I do have like a little, divot, or it's not a divot, a kind of a raised spot over here on the paint that's kind of, not typical Spark quality, but I'm not going to complain about it. And I think the biggest kind of knock is these wheel nuts here seem to be off centered. Like that does not look like, if I spun it, that is centered to the wheel. This front one also looks kind of askew as well. This side, not so bad. That looks a little bit better, more centered than that one there. So maybe this one was just having a bad day on this side of the car. I'm not really sure. I suppose I could break them off and try to straighten them myself, but I'm probably not going to do that. Anyway, so yeah, like I said, this is a beautiful car. Nice little plastic lenses here with the little details. The grill is a little, this kind of, I don't know, that's not really smooth in there. I don't love that. I think that could have been executed better, but overall, I think it's a nice model. Again, this is a car that I waited forever for. I really, was surprised when they made it. I love this era. So the 98 Porsche that won Le Mans, the CLK GTRs, and the Porsche GT1 cars. That's just kind of my favorite era of this sports car, that I remember watching when I was younger. So anyways, wanted to share this with you. It's a fantastic model. I'm super excited to add it to my collection. And hopefully I'll have some more stuff coming to you guys soon. If you like the video, hit like, hit subscribe, and I'll see you guys soon.